Welcome to Clear Vision Wednesday. I'm Claudia Mühlenweg, the founder of the Natural Clear Vision Institute, and this is my weekly live show all about vision and eyesight and how you can not just protect it and save it, but also how to improve it. And today I have a guest who she was here before. Her work is incredibly amazing because she is an eye doctor. So let me bring her on, Dr. Valerie Giangrande. Welcome to the show again.
Hi, Claudia. Thank you so much.
So you have an incredible Instagram. I want everybody to follow you on Instagram at Quantum Eye Doc, first of all. And every time you post something, I'm like, I message you, stop, we need to do an episode about this. It's like, because here's the backstory for everybody that doesn't know you, right? You are an optometrist working in New York, state New York, right? Not in the city, correct?
I'm not in the city now.
But you, through your own healing journey and your family's healing journey, you ended up studying, let me double check that I don't say it wrong, integrative holistic nutrition health coach, and you're also a certified applied quantum biology practitioner. So you got into that, like, root cause medicine,
Mhm.
field and have used that knowledge in addition to your traditional eye medicine, eye health knowledge to really help your clients and patients. So
Mhm.
today we want to talk about diabetes. And, I didn't really know, but diabetes is the leading cause of blindness, I believe, in this country. So tell us as an eye doctor, right, from your eye doctor perspective, like what are early warning signs or like tell us a little bit about how you might diagnose diabetes when somebody comes in for the eye exam.
Sure, sure. So what I found over the years is that when people come in and they say, I don't have to wear my glasses anymore. Suddenly I can see. And say they were wearing glasses, they had a high prescription, and literally in one day, they go from being very nearsighted to not needing their glasses. That doesn't happen in one day. Usually that's a blood sugar shift. That's 9 out of 10 times. There's a reason why that happens. There's a blood sugar shift, and they usually have diabetes. So we've diagnosed quite a few people just in that simple way, that there's this sudden fluctuation in vision. And it can go the opposite way. It can be that you could see fine, and then all of a sudden you can't see very well. And that happens because elevated blood sugar in the body will start to have fluid get into the excuse me, get into the lens of the eye, and that fluid will change the way light bends. And again, it is a pretty big sudden shift. And then some people will also get fluctuations where one day they need their glasses, another day they don't. So that's kind of a red flag that if it's really that drastic of a change, go get your blood sugar checked. Looking into the eyes, I mean, you can easily, if it's been uncontrolled for a while and someone doesn't know, because there really are no symptoms of diabetic retinopathy in the eyes, you can see different things, of course. There's different ways, different types of bleeding that happen. And I know you know that, Claudia. There's different leakage patterns and blood patterns that you can tell. So that's pretty obvious in general. But typically, if someone's just starting to have diabetes, we're not really going to see necessarily retinopathy right away.
I see. So you might, but I've heard from clients too where the eye doctor diagnosed diabetes and the family doctor didn't know. Before we get into like what you actually, so symptoms could be really quick. Quick vision changes goes from clear to blurry or the other way around, that happen really fast, not just the normal fluctuations. And then when you do an eye exam, you can obviously see if it's an advanced stage, you can see the bleeding in the retina, the blood vessels, the proliferation of additional blood vessels and clots, and I think those white spots. Um, but what is the connection to cataracts? Because, and I know we didn't talk about this right before, but I always hear from my clients, the eye doctor always says, oh, you have cataracts, like everybody gets them in their 60s, or you have glaucoma. But is there also a connection to diabetic changes in the body affecting other eye diseases than so-called diabetic retinopathy says it in the name. But what about macular degeneration, glaucoma, cataract, like the three big, age-related vision diseases? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, cataracts are much, diabetics get cataracts much quicker. Absolutely. The way the blood sugar interacts with the crystalline proteins, they can get oxidized very quickly. And there's different types, there's different parts of the lens and different types of cataracts. So diabetics will absolutely have much faster cataracts in a different layer of the lens. So that's pretty obvious that it's a blood sugar issue. Macular degeneration is associated with metabolic dysfunction. So you can have a higher risk just from being diabetic in general. Macular degeneration is a really big risk factor of so many metabolic issues. But yes, diabetes, glaucoma there's so many. I don't know that there's a link to diabetes necessarily, but there are diabetics who have glaucoma. There's plenty of people who have glaucoma and don't have diabetes. So I don't know that I would make that link, but cataracts definitely. Poor wound healing, dryness. But again, that there's a lot of overlap with other conditions, but cataracts absolutely are can be made worse with diabetes.
Yeah, because I mean it's interesting. My mom, I don't know when she was diagnosed with diabetes, but my grandparents had a bakery. I mean, I grew up eating pie every day, and we all have a sweet tooth. And I know sugar is the one thing that you're not supposed to do. And we talk about diet in a moment. But I'm also, my mom was all of a sudden diabetic, right? And I was like, well, then she's like, well, my mom had it. It's genetic, Is this idea that there's nothing we can do? And I'm like, oh, did you turn diabetic overnight? I mean, you talked about these quick vision changes, but that does that mean that people are like healthy and all of a sudden the next day they're diabetic, or what? Like, what are the stages? And everybody that's not diabetic yet, how do you know that you're on the track to maybe getting diabetes, and how do you prevent it? Obviously, can we talk a little bit about that
For
part?
sure. Yeah, the body does everything it can to heal itself, to try to maintain this homeostasis for years and then until you can't. But metabolic disease, insulin resistance, it can be a slow process. I mean, some of the clues, if you're somebody who is starving every few hours and you feel like you need to eat because that blood sugar is dropping, your metabolic state's probably not that good because your blood sugar is dropping. Then you need to eat because you need to raise your insulin. And then there's all these leptin resistance. Maybe there's so many different things, but our metabolism can go wrong for many years. And then you develop, a lot of people are pre-diabetic. There's also seasonal changes. Our body is meant to be a little more insulin resistant, or like in the winter we're supposed to be a little more ketogenic. In the summer we can handle more carbs. Like some of this is evolutionary, it's not such a bad thing, but the way our world is, we live like it's summer and we're eating carbs all year round, so there's a big seasonal component to that. So it can happen over a very long way, and I think there's many ways to reverse it. We just have to know exactly how to do that.
I,
So yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important to know the early one. I used to be exactly that. I had no idea. And then I found an online webinar in 2018. I was like, oh, because I was the hangry one, right? If I didn't eat within an hour or two after eating, I was always like looking for the Snickers bars and the candy bars and
Right.
that carb craving. So I had no idea that was a thing until I learned more about this. So if you're that person who has that brain fog, right? Who craves food even after eating, you're not hungry, you're still hungry, you don't really feel satisfied. Maybe sweets or carbs is what you're craving, 100%. So I always tell this story. So I had a woman call me many years ago from Germany, and she told me she had cataract. She was 42 or something like that. So I asked her, is that anything in the family? Because I mean, there's also juvenile cataracts. Like some babies are born with cataracts. And she said, no. But I said, well, what about your blood glucose? Like yeah, I'm pre-diabetic, but my doctor said I have nothing to worry about. And I don't remember if that was her family doctor. I don't think it was her eye doctor.
Mm.
But I was like, and that's the problem, right? With the system. It's like we wait till it's like basically we wait till we drive through the red light, and then we get flashed and like ticket, and when the light is already yellow, and nobody says anything. So what is like so when you have a patient and they come in and you diagnose some kind of either cataract or diabetic retinopathy, or you see some early stages of this, um, like what do you tell them and what do they usually say the doctor said if they were already diagnosed? I'm just curious how your advice is different than what they might hear from their
Right.
regular.
Yeah, so I always say, what did your doctor do, or what were the recommendations? And a lot of people will just say, oh, I stopped eating my sugar, I stopped eating carbs and pasta, and that's where it ends. And I always say I've been saying for the last few years, like, did your doctor mention anything about light? And I get a blank stare for the most part because no one's heard
Right?
most people.
What do you mean, blue light?
Right, light, what does light have to do with sugar? And it's interesting because when I say this statement that you can eat the best diet, you can never have another carb again, but if you are exposed to light at night, your blood sugar will be elevated as if you had a bowl of ice cream. I mean, it really is that amazing that light plays a role. And I'm not saying that diet doesn't play a role because it does, of course, but we need to talk about this light piece because it's controls so much and it's a big driver of our metabolic issues in the world that we live in. We're just under these horrible lights and I can get into specifics about that, but I think that light piece is part of the reason why so many of us are metabolically unhealthy.
So then we, we do all the things, we meditate, we don't eat sugar, we try to exercise, and then we sit under fluorescent lights or we sit like in, bright lights at night with all this blue light or the whatever they call the LED lights
LED.
top on the recessed ceiling lights and then we still don't get better and we still feel tired. It's funny, I somebody posted on Instagram yesterday, there's a new emoji on iPhones, like this tired emoji, a tired one.
Right.
And literally like thousands of comments. Oh God, that's gonna be my favorite emoji. I'm tired all the time. Me too, me too, me too. I'm like, oh my God, there's all these really, and I don't know who these people are, if they like, but it's like it's an epidemic of fatigue and tiredness, right?
Mhm.
And so you think there's a connection to light?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know I've mentioned I was on another, podcast with you and I did go over light, but I want to stress that when we're exposed to artificial light at night, just an unbalanced blue, it will raise our cortisol, which automatically raises our blood sugar. And it's there's no way around it. We have to do something about it. So the reason why that happens is we know that blue light, cortisol is not a bad thing. We need cortisol. Blue light from the morning sun is what we're designed for, and because cortisol gives us energy, helps us live. I mean, we need that cortisol to be high in the morning. When cortisol gets released by our adrenal glands, it's going to tell the liver to release glucose. So we have energy. So the liver goes through gluconeogenesis, and that's to give our body energy, which is a good thing. But at night, we're not expecting light. We're not expecting any blue light. We're not supposed to have blue light. Cortisol, again, is supposed to be low. So when we're exposed to, I mean, we don't even need much of it, but we have this unbalanced blue, the brain gets that signal again that it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Those receptors, that whole cycle starts all over again. So there's that cortisol that goes up, and cortisol will literally send a message to the liver, and that liver will release blood sugar. It's going to break down muscle. It needs amino acids. It's going to break down muscle. It's going to break down tissue to give us glucose in our bloodstream. So now our blood is full of sugar. So what happens? The pancreas says, well, we need more insulin. We got to get rid of this sugar. We shouldn't have this sugar in our bloodstream. But cortisol, we're naturally less insulin sensitive at night. And cortisol doesn't really allow insulin to work as well. So your body's going to keep pumping out that insulin to try to get that sugar back into your cells, but it's not working. So now you're pumping out this insulin and you're becoming insulin resistant. The body's not even listening to you, which is horrible. And then now you have this chronically elevated blood sugar. But there's even more to it than that because with this high level of insulin, then the brain is no longer listening to insulin either because insulin will also go to the brain. We have receptors in our brain so that our body knows what's going on, or the brain knows what's going on. And when we have all this high insulin again, then we can become insulin resistant in the brain. But we also have the leptin piece. Leptin is another really major hormone that's controlling our metabolism. So there's a circadian component to that as well. So leptin is something that our fat cells will release. So when I mentioned that if we're someone who gets hungry every few hours, and I was like this always. I had
Right? You're like,
work,
who
I always
is,
had snacks
we fess up, we
constantly.
were totally that person, like
Yeah. And I
eating
was
lunch, I'm
told,
like, where's the snack bar?
right. And I remember telling a doctor told me you have to eat every few hours to keep your blood sugar stable. Like that was
5 meals a
right.
day, right?
Yeah,
Didn't
bring cheese, bring the. So anyway, but leptin, what's supposed to happen is after every meal, our insulin goes up, we get that sugar out of our system, goes into our muscles, it goes into our, just it gets out of our bloodstream, so we have energy that's stored. A few hours later, now our fat cells will release leptin. And leptin is basically saying like how much energy you have. So leptin will go to the brain and tell the brain, okay, this is how much food I ate. I should have, this is the amount of energy I have. So the brain will say, okay, good, you ate enough. You don't have to be hungry now for a few hours, whatever, for a few hours. And then eventually you get hungry and you eat again. And that's what's supposed to happen. And that will hopefully keep us, not hungry for say 4, 5, 6 hours. And then at night, at midnight, if our circadian rhythm is intact and we are actually sleeping, leptin is supposed to dock to the brain at midnight. And at midnight, it's going to give all the information from the day saying, this is all the food I ate. This is all the fat I have. This is all the energy I have. And the brain will say, okay, great, you have enough energy. So I'm not going to make you that hungry tomorrow. You can burn this fat. You don't need to eat that much. Okay. And that's what happens because it's on a circadian timing mechanism. But now what happens is that insulin is going to compete with that same receptor in the brain. So if you have all this insulin, then leptin can't get there and the body thinks you're starving. So you can have all this extra weight, all these fat cells sending out leptin, and the brain's not listening. So then you're going to keep sending out more and more leptin. And if the brain doesn't get that message, the brain thinks you're starving and you get these messages that you're starving and then you want to eat again. So now you're going to eat because you just feel like you're hungry because you're not getting that signal that you're full. And then the cycle keeps going. So now you're eating more, the blood sugar's going up, cortisol's up, insulin resistance, leptin resistance, and that cycle. And you can see why it's really easy to be metabolically unhealthy, even if you're trying to eat well, because a lot of people start the day out really good, really good. Like I'm going to, start this day and be good. And by the nighttime, they're starving and they can't help it. And anybody who's really hungry after you eat dinner and a few hours later you're hungry again, that's really blue light toxicity. Because again, that cortisol is messing with you. That cortisol is just, creating this whole cycle of blood sugar, insulin resistance, leptin resistance. And that blue light is also going to shut down melatonin, which means we're not sleeping as well. We're not going to have the ability to have leptin go to the brain. So it's a really big issue, light. Just simple as block your blue light, put on your orange glasses at night, get some sunshine, eat in the morning, try to give yourself a nice, breakfast full of protein in the morning so your body can know that it has enough nutrients and that should be a nice, an easier way to help that blood sugar.
I mean, it makes total sense, right? I mean, I think it's, I for like 5 years I didn't eat breakfast and I definitely felt good, but I also I can't remember where that was in the summer it was easier, in the winter it was different, right? And I do like intermittent fasting, but what you say makes total sense that we get that energy in the morning, that we get food in the morning, we get protein in the morning, we get food. I think the biggest piece for a lot of us, and including myself, is the evening. So especially in the winter, when it gets dark at like 4:30, 4 o'clock. And I usually eat dinner rather early-ish. And I usually like eat at like 5:30 and I go to bed at 9. But there is definitely that period where even though I have no blue light and I wear my orange glasses and I have my little like orange lamps and all that, there's also, I think, the emotional component of like the end of the day, that idea of happy hour. It's like the end of the workday. I love my work, so it's not so much, but then I've been going through some emotional tough times. And then, that's not our topic today, but I think that's another thing that we also need to look at some point. Like, say we have all the light fixed, we have the good clean diet, no sugar, no junk food, no processed food, and we eating clean. I think the last piece of the puzzle is, again, that's not our topic, but it's also that emotional eating. Because when a friend of mine, we were in the same business group in 2016, she talked about, oh, I'm going to create an emotional eating course. I'm like, who's an emotional eater? And then I found a book years later. I was like, oh, 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 check, 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 check. And it's kind of like that same idea. You have a glass of wine at the end of the day. So maybe tell us a little bit about, so we understand the biology of the blue light, right? How it connects to the cortisol and the melatonin and the hunger hormone ghrelin, and then the satisfaction, whatever it's called, the I'm full leptin
Mhm.
hormone. So we understand that. What other things can people do? Let's say you get those kind of munchies, and I don't mean the weed munchies, but you're watching Netflix and you were at Costco with all the good intentions and you bought that bag of chips and talking, you're like, oh, I'm gonna save that for like, because we're supposed to have a non-perishable food thing for earthquakes and fires. You buy all these things just in case,
Mhm.
and then my
Oh,
little zombie
it's
self
easier
walks
said
over.
than done. Yeah, it's easier said than done, right? It just says, well, don't eat it. But that urge, and it's so powerful. I mean, if you're leptin resistant and you may have to eat more meals at first and try to extend those meals, it's not everyone can go 5 hours without eating right away. Sometimes you have to, you know, start maybe if you're someone who's eating all day long, try not to graze, but try to spread out the meals a little bit. And then I think it gets easier.
Yeah, let's get into tips. So one of the things is like, and it's, as you were talking, it reminded me of my second born. My firstborn was off the bat, like every 3 hours breastfeeding, done, finished. The second one was a grazer. And then it's like a little bit, only one side, and then you're done. And then 30 minutes later, no, I want the rest. And I was like, I have to put her on a schedule. I had to wean her to like slowly, and it reminded me of that little baby,
Mhm.
Zoe was like, okay, let's put you on an hour. That's an hour and a half. And then we slowly got to like 3 hours. So I think any tips that you have, like let's say you're trying to like by 15 minutes, whatever, right? You try to extend the break. Let's go
Right.
over like what foods should you not eat when you try to do that? Like what are the foods that might make it even harder? And do you have some tips? Like one thing I learned that I found helpful is like when I feel I'm hungry, just drinking water.
Water, yeah.
Anything else that you find helpful to kind of extend
Sure.
that?
Sure. And I'm by no means the pinnacle of you know, I mean, but yes, we want to prioritize protein, right? You always want to try to eat protein first. This way you're satiated, healthy fat, seasonal eating. If you're in this, if it's summertime and it's light until 7, 8 o'clock at night, and there's a lot of fruit and tropical fruit growing, not tropical fruit wherever we are, but a lot of carbs, a lot of fruit, and a lot of things available, then we can handle it a little bit better when the sun is up for longer because we're able to handle that. But in the winter, we want to be a little more careful because once that sun is down, we're not really digesting, which I know I had mentioned earlier. But uh, all this leptin talk is people who are leptin resistant. There are people who can have low leptin, which is the opposite of this, which is not as common, but low leptin would be somebody who's the body is still doesn't think that we're safe, so the metabolism is off, but it's usually somebody who's very stressed or
Right.
not overweight at all, just stressed, and the body just has no, um, just not safe. So you're not making hormones properly because leptin is also linked to our fertility. Our body's not going to be able to have make babies if we're under stress and we don't have enough energy according to the brain. So all of this is linked, like just our circadian rhythm. And you made a good point about stress, Claudia. I mean, mental stress, all of this, I mean, stress is going to cause so much of that. I mean, it's hard to say just breathe or just take it easy. I mean, that's a huge component, stress
But
in
what you're
general.
what you're basically saying is so sometimes, because we hear these people talk about, oh, you should never eat oxalates, you should never eat leptins, you should never. But you basically, what I'm understanding what you're saying, and I know we didn't talk about oxalates, but a lot of times it's looking at like why is this low? Is there stress? Like looking at that root cause versus just blaming the food, and then maybe in the meantime you use transition tools or dietary regimens to help you transition, but really you want to look at that root cause, let's
And
say of stress, for instance, right? So protein, you said protein first, healthy fats, and then what else?
right.
What
So
else should we try to get in the meal?
So everybody's different. Of course, you need to find what works for you, but seasonal eating or what's in season doesn't have to be right next door to where you live. But we know within reason, like you wouldn't eat a mango in New York in December, something like that. So you want to be
Right.
careful. But what's interesting, if you say have a meal, we can handle more carbs in the middle of the day when the sun is up because we're outside. If you eat say a meal with carbs, which is okay, carbs aren't bad as long as as long as within reason. But if you eat that meal, say under blue light and you're inside, say you're at work at your desk and you're eating it and there's blue light under you and you're stressed out, and that meal is going to make your blood sugar go up higher than it would if you were sitting outside eating that same meal with friends and not being stressed. Like there's
Can you
actually such
explain
a
that a little bit?
component.
Can you explain, is it the light or is it the stress level,
It's
what you're talking
both.
about?
I mean, it's a
Yeah.
light. It's being eating outside is always going to give you a better blood sugar response because that's how our body's supposed to be. Again, light's controlling all of those aspects of our um, mealtime, everything. It's just light is what we need. So just being outside will let us or allow us to handle carbs better. It just makes, especially when the sun is stronger in the summer, which is why tropical fruit, if you live in the tropics, is fine. It's full of sugar, but you're out in the sun, getting all this UV, your body needs that. You get energy from that. It's just much easier to handle. So it also
So
depends
carbs in the
on,
middle of the day, and ideally follow your body's cravings, right? I mean, like there's a reason watermelon grows, I don't know, in the summer, and
right.
cabbage grows, or kale or some of those things and those stews. So it's
Mhm.
interesting. A lot of people talk about carbs at night, but I like that idea. I mean, here's the one thing. I usually eat a salad at lunch because, and I put it out of the fridge in the morning. I don't like to eat anything cold, especially in the winter. So I usually, by the time I eat it, it's not cold anymore. It's like room temperature. But I do not really, maybe the idea would then be to have two meals that are not cold. Maybe even saute some greens or, do something like that versus eating a salad in the winter. Is that kind of
Yeah,
when
I don't
it's
like
the
eating
middle of the
salad.
day?
Yeah, I don't like eating salad in the winter. It just doesn't feel right. That a salad.
And I live in Los Angeles, so
Oh,
today it's actually raining, but yesterday it was like nice and warm. So I'm sitting outside pretty much every day at lunch, pretty much every day,
hmm
except for the day when it's raining. I'm not that hardcore.
hmm
But so carbs at lunchtime, protein, healthy fats, and then seasonal eating is basically what you're saying. And then try to expand the what
So
are some
try to
tips
eat
for the
before the sun goes down too late. I know that's really hard for people with work, but we're once we start eating and it's too late, again, digestive enzymes go down. We're not going to have enough time for that leptin to dock at night. If we just ate at 9 o'clock at night, our insulin's going to be high, and then that's again going to dock into the brain, and leptin won't be able to get there in time for midnight. So if we're eating late and then we're trying to go to sleep, that's why we don't really sleep that well on a full stomach. So
yeah,
we need to have a few hours to digest so
my
that
aura tells me
yeah,
every time I eat
or
late, I'm like, uh-oh.
yeah, my aura ring. It's funny. I mean, I guess I've been under a little bit of stress, but it's giving me some stress, stress
My
is a big
readiness
deal.
was 59 the other day. I was like, okay, but I had a really bad week. And
Mm.
so, yeah, but it's interesting. So I'm just wondering as you're talking, because I always thought, oh my God, I had a neighbor a long time ago and she went to bed at 8 p.m. and woke up at 5. And I'm like, I thought like, God, she was like my age or younger. I was like, she's such an old, like, she's like a senior citizen. you know? And now I'm doing the same thing. I eat like dinner at 5:30. But what about people in Spain and they eat dinner at 10 p.m.? I mean, they also do a 3-hour siesta in the middle of the day. But what like
Right.
is that? I mean, I
I
feel
think
like
it's
again, we don't know anything about the health status, but overall I feel like they
they're
might be
healthy.
healthier than a lot of Americans. So
I think it's
any
community. I think they're not, maybe not under as much stress as we are.
yeah,
Again, with
okay.
their families. So again, doesn't all have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be stressful. I think the stress component is huge. The emotional component is huge. It's okay to eat, to not be perfect, but if you're enjoying yourself, you're not stressed, you're with loved ones. I mean, all of that goes such a long way. I think their whole lifestyle is probably so much better. I don't
Way
want to say
more
better, but just
chill.
different, less stressful.
My grandpa, he died at like many years ago, and he was 90, I think he was 98. And he always puffed a cigar, right? So
Mhm.
basically what we're trying to say is he didn't live to 98 because he smoked a cigar every day. And he also didn't inhale, by the way. He puffed it. But that's not, but for many other reasons, he lived a long, happy life, right? So you're saying people that,
Right.
in Spain, they do the long siesta, they have a chiller life, less stress, less
Outside
community.
more. Maybe they're,
Uh,
yeah, sure.
so basically, because sometimes I think that is I love science, but I think sometimes with science, the problem is that we just look at one thing and then we don't look at the big picture of all the
Right.
factors affecting us. So,
Right. When people
yeah,
see this is a superfood from this place that they live to be, this superfood from this great place in the world where people live long. But what about their lifestyle? Of course, yeah, they have this one food that everybody wants to eat,
the
but
purple
it's not just about
yams.
that food.
Ah, the purple yams. I like them too, but they do actually they don't raise my blood sugar as much as the orange sweet potatoes. But I have one of those sensors in my arm right now. One
Oh,
of those. Yeah,
yeah.
I always do that periodically just to see,
hmm
what's happening. And but I think it's very, very effective to get a sense because, like you said, we don't feel those things. We don't really feel high like glucose unless it's extremely high. We
Right.
might just feel tired and fatigue and have belly fat and maybe brain fog and but
Hmm.
then everybody else does too. And so it's like, oh, you're in menopause, it's just normal. Everybody gets that in menopause, like,
Right.
uh, so, and I'm looking at, I don't see any questions on YouTube, but I'm wondering anything else like from the eye doctor's perspective that you want to add because you see a lot of these conditions and any tips that you want to give people, diabetes or not diabetes, but in terms
Yeah.
of, go ahead.
Again, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record because I did say this already, but at the minimum, even if you're afraid of sunshine, at a minimum, you have to wear these glasses at night. I mean, we have to block our blue. Because it doesn't matter what else we do. If our light is off, it does throw everything off. And we really, really need that sunshine. We need to try to get out there as much as we can. Even 2 minutes is going to help you. I mean, crack open your window, just do what you can, get out there, ground. If we can attach to that earth and gather that energy, we can get energy where the sun gives us electrons. Like we don't get all of our energy from our food. We gather energy from sunlight, from the earth, from electrons. And the more energy, the more sun we have, the more energy we have where we may not get as hungry. Does that make sense? It's just,
No, that makes total sense. I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, just,
I literally go out the house and I go to the mailbox, I go out the block. I'm just making up some stuff just to be outside.
yeah,
It's like, I definitely try every morning. Today is the one day that this whole year where I didn't because it was raining and I had a really early presentation. But usually, actually, I did go out. I just went out, I think went to the trash. But sometimes I'm just making up little things just to get outside.
yeah.
And I know if it's cold, just put on a jacket. But
Cold
people
is
that have a
actually
dog,
really,
people that have
cold is,
dogs,
yeah.
they always find time to go outside.
Yes.
So I always think, even if you're not a dog owner, pretend you have a dog.
Yes. You know what's interesting, and I don't talk about this very much, but cold exposure, cold plunging is a fantastic thing for people who have leptin resistance. And I wouldn't recommend just jumping into a cold plunge because that's a stress on the body. But to build up with even ice cold face splashes can actually help build up that tolerance because the way we burn fat is basically from our mitochondria burning brown adipose tissue. And those receptors in the body, again, if we're leptin resistant, our body doesn't know to even burn fat. So the way to try to train that is by being cold. Because this is if we live in a northern climate, if you're somebody who's from, not somebody who's from the tropics, but someone who has mitochondria that are meant to keep us warm in the cold, if we never get cold, we don't have the ability to make warmth for our body to secrete heat or make heat because when we burn heat, we're burning fat when we're keeping ourselves warm. So people who do cold plunging can really just increase their or improve their metabolism very well. And even sauna is a nice way to just improve metabolism as
Sauna.
well.
I like
Yeah,
sauna. I don't like
infrared
cold.
sauna, I love it. I know. I hate that. I'm not, that's why I don't talk about the cold that much. I wish it's the one thing I wish I have to do more because I think that would really help me out. But I get outside and I'm cold in the winter. I do my walks every morning. But I don't necessarily cold plunge. And I know it.
Barefoot walks in the winter are also great. I mean, I've done that in Germany at the beach and walking barefoot and being bundled up on top but having the feet in the water and you get
Mhm.
that kind of but I want to have a couple more questions. So something that is not directly related just to diabetes, but what do you recommend? Because I feel like, and I feel like there's people, this is brought on recent events that only believe in holistic things. They never see a traditional doctor. And then there's people that only believe in like Western medicine and never even think about anything that you just talked about, right?
Right.
What is the thing that you recommend? Because I also have clients that haven't seen a doctor and eye doctor in 10 years, but and I always say, don't go just to get a new prescription, stronger glasses. But what do you recommend for anybody? Let's say you're over 50. Let's say you have healthy, like you don't have any, like
Mhm.
genes for AMD or anything. But what do you recommend just to get your eye health checked and to make sure that you find something potentially super early, in which
Right.
case, there's things that we can do about it, like diabetes or, right? What do you recommend as an interval for somebody who doesn't have any pre-existing conditions to see how often to
I
go get
mean,
the eye checked?
the conventional answer is every year, right? It's like get your eyes
Well,
checked.
what is your answer?
Um,
Let's say you don't have any blurry vision, you don't have
I
any.
mean, there are things that can show up that you would have no idea,
Okay,
unfortunately.
what? Give us some
Eye
examples.
pressure. If you have an elevated eye pressure, you would have no idea. Now, again,
Right,
there's a lot of reasons for elevated eye pressure that may not be a disease process that you have glaucoma, but there could be other things going on. But eye pressure that's elevated for a very long time that you don't even know can really cause some nerve damage. I mean, in one of my office locations, there's a very high population of glaucoma, and I have patients, unfortunately, who have never been to a doctor, and they come in and their nerve is gone. I mean, it's unfortunate. Like their nerve is so advanced, and you really don't get that tissue back. It's gone. Their pressure has been high. They had no idea, and that's a shame because there would have been things that we could have done. And yes, they are conventional eye drops and stuff. And at times you obviously need to use eye drop. There are things we have to do to try to
right,
to try
right.
to preserve that nerve tissue. Diabetes also, diabetes, if you do have a little bit of bleeding in the eye, you really don't know. And you can get to a point where there are also people who haven't had their eyes checked and they come in, they think they're healthy, they're fine. And again, they're living, it's not, you look at them and you think they're healthy, but they have sometimes advanced things going on in the eyes, bleeding, birthmarks that just don't look right. I always tell this story. I have someone who, it was just a 40-year-old mom, and she came in and just had no symptoms, and we happened to take a picture and there was a melanoma in her eye, and you couldn't actually see it just by looking. You had to, just the way the picture was, it was hiding behind the iris.
Oh,
It was, and it was just this heart-sinking moment because it was huge, it was really big, and thank God we did that because she is fine. She didn't, because normally you would just lose your eye, you can lose your life, and the way when it gets to a certain point like that, and she had no idea, like there were really no symptoms of it. So things like that, not to scare people, I
no,
don't
but
want to
I think it's important. I
fear
mean, it's
mongering,
been
but
years for me, and my second cousin is an eye doctor in Germany. I usually go see, but then she had a death in the family, and we had to cancel the appointment. And
Mhm.
so it's been probably 2 years for me. So that gives me a good reminder to definitely go. Yeah. So yeah, I think, but we want to make sure that our eyes are healthy, that we catch things early on, right? So that is a big point.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter if it's diabetes or melanoma or any other things that could potentially be. And glaucoma is called the silent vision killer for a
it
reason,
is.
right? It's
And
like,
macular changes, if we start
yeah.
seeing drusen, you start seeing changes on the macula, there are things, and again, there's red light therapy. There's so many things that we can do naturally that can try to, but I think we should be doing all the healthy things in general to prevent. But you really, if you know that something's happening, it kind of can put a spark under you to say, okay, let's make some changes and see if there's anything we can do. So it's nice. And there's so many tools. A lot of people don't like to have their eyes dilated, and I understand that. But I don't know if you know what the but the optomap is, but there's really some beautiful
Yeah,
retinal
what is, you mean
the
the visual
optomap,
field assessment?
I'm sorry?
The visual field assessment, or what do you
No,
mean?
no, there's cameras that most offices these days have where you can take this beautiful retinal image. I mean, it's a huge photo of the retina that which is it doesn't take the place of a dilation necessarily, but it really shows a big bulk of the retina, and you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
see,
that's what my cousin does. Yeah, we done
right. It's
on the dilation. So that's a good question, I know. But why? Okay, so you take that picture. Would you then only do a dilation if you find anything sketchy, or like when would you do a dilation? I remember those days as a kid. Like I always said, oh my God, I hated that dilation.
I know.
But tell us a little bit why you also recommend for certain people to do that.
If you're a diabetic, we really dilate anyway. You have to be dilated. People who are very nearsighted, very myopic, their retina is stretched out and thin. There's usually a pretty high correlation with holes and thinning and tears as, if it gets really
What
bad.
does very nearsighted mean? What level of diopter are we talking about?
Um, very well, anybody, and a lot of people are over a -4, but I mean, very high would be a -8, -9,
Right, but
-7.
like where's the point where you want to be like, because
So, I
people
mean,
may not
anybody over a
identify as very high,
-4, I'm sorry.
-4 or more.
I feel like yeah, -4. You really want to get your eyes dilated. I mean, with those photos, um, I have someone, we take photos on almost everybody for the most part, and I also dilate. But not everybody can be dilated. So it's not, some people are driving home and it's unsafe. And there are ways to take that photo where you can do eye steering. But when I do dilate, I have seen a tear that the picture missed. It doesn't, some people don't take a really good picture and you're not seeing the entire retina. So a dilation is technically the gold standard still, but those photos are really fantastic. It's amazing for just monitoring things and just for looking, especially if you have a birthmark in your eye or freckle or something that we're monitoring. Those photos really come in handy. They're fantastic. For myself, I mean, I do them on myself all the time. I don't haven't had my own eyes dilated in a while, so I shouldn't admit that, but I do take those photos
I
on
definitely
myself.
need to go back, but I think this is a really important call for everybody. Obviously, I'm holistic vision coach. I teach all holistic approaches. I
Mhm.
connect with eye doctors like you, but we also need to make sure that, just pretending. I
Right.
think it's very important to say that it's important to also, there's some good things in Western medicine, and especially doctors that have a training in Western medicine and do the things that you do. So people can find you in New York. I think you have two locations and a physical
Well,
eye doctor
yes.
practice.
So I just wanted to mention that if anybody, because I have had a few people come see me, which I think is lovely, and I'm so excited about it. Just if anybody does look me up, there's one location I think that works the best that would be easier to come to. It would be the Belmore location because I'm in a few different
Belmore.
locations. Yeah, just one office for me is super busy and I just don't have the time to spend that I would like to. And the other office would be a little bit easier. So just I think when you call the offices, I've tried to tell the front desk to try to steer people to if anybody calls and wants to see me, make sure you say why or where you found me so they know to put you in Belmore. But again, if that's not many people live on
That's really
the
good to know. And then where else can people find you? Let me see. There's a question. Any suggestions for those receiving injections other than diet? Oh, that's probably, it sounds like the macular degeneration
or
injections. I don't
even for
know.
diabetes, you can have it via
Diabetes.
injection. Yeah, I mean, for me, the red light therapy for the eyes had the studies on red light therapy are really amazing. In this country, we're not really using it necessarily in practice. In the UK, they are. There's a Dr. Glenn Jeffrey is a researcher that put out a lot of good information about red light therapy, and he found just 3 minutes of 670 nanometer wavelengths in the morning has the potential to really stabilize, help with visual
Eyes
acuity.
open, eyes closed.
Well, no, so here's the thing, you can't just use any red light. So there's one particular, yeah, I don't want to make any recommendations on the red light. I think there was another podcast I was on that talked about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. But I'm just saying sunlight,
Right.
also natural light has the,
Sunlight, morning sunshine. That's what it, yeah. And that's why it only works in the morning. But there is one device that he actually used in the studies from the UK called iPower, EYEPOWER. And it's just a pair of goggles. And that's what he used in the studies. So it's kind of a nice, 3 minutes.
those
If any,
pills, but people had them on and had their eyes open. Is that what they did? You
for
don't
this
know.
particular one, they had their eyes open with this particular device, but this device
Right.
is super, super mild. He said I've heard him say it's the intensity of a bicycle light. Like that's how light it is. A lot of red light devices are very strong, so you have
Very
to be
bright.
careful
Yeah.
with that. So, but red light, but again, yes, morning sunshine. Morning sunshine
Getting
is actually
outside, and even if it's overcast, I think it
get
just takes longer,
outside.
but you still get those beautiful.
Naked
Yeah,
eyes,
sometimes the
yes.
best biohacks are just
Mhm.
bio, right? Biology, like getting outside into nature.
Right.
So,
Dr. Glenn Jeffrey, I saw a question. That's the name.
yeah,
He's
that
on.
was the research done that about the mitochondrial health of people, I think over 40, first in mice and then in men. He did it.
Mhm.
But
It
yeah,
reduces
so
blood sugar. They found that the red light also helps reduce blood sugar because
oh,
it's going to help your mitochondria work better. It's going to help the mitochondria utilize glucose more. So red light therapy is actually really good for blood sugar utilization as well. And
so basically we
that doesn't
talked
have to
about
be in the eyes. It's just red light therapy in general is
right.
fantastic.
So the infrared sauna that I'm sitting in, is that helpful? Like,
Infrared sauna is fantastic because that's also going to help. Well, the infrared sauna is far infrared, so it's heat, which is
yes.
going to help your exclusion zone water, which is
Oh,
what
good. Okay.
and that's what we need. That's really the most important thing in general with our electricity and our voltage, and then you're sweating out toxins, and yeah, that's fantastic. That's also going to help your mitochondria. Absolutely.
But we can get the red light, morning sunshine, morning natural light, eating
UVA rise again, like
seasonally.
I said last time.
Hmm?
The UVA rise also an hour after sunrise, where we're making
Yes,
that's also the important part because that's where we're making dopamine, melatonin, all those neurotransmitters. Our eyes actually need those signals as well. But I know I've talked about that in a prior.
you did. But basically, we want to eat seasonal. We want to try to slowly space. We stop the grazing, eat protein, healthy fats, and then whatever seasonal vegetables. More
Right.
carbs in the summer, like, warmer foods in the winter.
Right. Moving
And
after we eat too, just taking a little walk is going to lower our blood sugar
yeah,
also.
taking a little walk. Sometimes I do like 20 air squats or lunges or something. There's one last question on YouTube. I know we've been going for 45 minutes, but macular pucker. I mean, anything that you want to would say differently about somebody who has a macular pucker?
So interesting that you bring this up, macular pucker. It's the one thing I still think macular pucker is so frustrating because it's just this cellophane that grows, this little film that grows. And when you do the research on it, it's like, what causes this? What causes this? It's to me, it's the jelly. It's the ball of jelly rubbing up against the retina, and then this glial tissue just proliferates, and it's kind of an inflammation or and yes, anything that we do in this world with blue light is going to dehydrate our vitreous. That ball of jelly is going to
The
cause a
jelly
little.
that you're talking about, oops, let me get my
Mhm.
eyeball here. So that is basically the jelly and that rubs against the,
Right,
wait, that's the optic nerve. There's the macula right there, the yellow spot.
right.
Basically, you know.
They actually say that after you have a vitreous detachment is when it happens. So when
Oh,
that ball of jelly condenses, then something, and it's actually pulling away from it, then something about the glial tissue gets activated and then it can create these,
oh, and then it
and then
grows
it
like a new
grows.
film over the macula. That's
Yeah.
the macular pucker.
Right.
Okay.
So to me, that's an inflammatory condition. Everything that we do that involves artificial blue light, Wi-Fi signals, dehydration, those are all inflammatory. So it's all the same advice for me, like circadian rhythm, reducing inflammation, making sure we're wearing those blue blockers, getting red light, all of those things I think are still helpful. Um, but I don't have a good, yeah, macular pucker to me is something that I'm really trying to research to figure that one out. And I haven't really, I don't have a great answer for that one.
Well, thank you so much for that. That was super helpful. We have our little private Q&A in the Clear Vision Club now. And thank you, YouTube, for watching. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make also sure you follow Dr. Valerie. It's Quantum Eye Doc on Instagram. And then your website is, what is your website? QuantumEyeDoc.com? Is it?
So far I have a YouTube. I'm working on so many things I'm working on. I haven't I don't have a website yet. I'm working on courses that I will be out very shortly. So
But
looking.
also everything is in the show notes on YouTube underneath how you can connect with Dr. Valerie. And we will, I know you're super busy, but I'm trying to bring you back regularly. You're doing a lot of great work in the world and hopefully educating other eye doctors and really teaching people how, because most eye doctors just say that light is very dangerous and we need to protect our eyes at all given times. And educating us on the benefits of light doesn't mean that that we should always run around without sunglasses all day long
Right.
depending on where you are, but you're doing such great work. And when you posted about diabetes, I was like, wait, I didn't know the direct connection. So that's been very interesting how light really affects our whole biology and including our hormones and our blood sugar and, potentially getting diabetes, which is then a big contributor to vision problems and eye diseases. So thank you so much, Dr. Valerie. Goodbye, YouTube now. We will subscribe. Don't forget that. And I see you guys next week.